Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my Sunday live stream where we talk about photography and what's new, what's been happening, and it's always the highlight of my day to come in and see everyone again. I really appreciate you guys joining me this morning and being part of the community. I'm really happy with how this has grown to such a great community of photographers and enthusiasts that enjoy particularly Micro Four Thirds systems. But of course, we're not limited to that. I shoot all different kinds of formats. But I guess for me, the biggest thing that happened this week is I finally got the 300 millimeter f4. And it's a lens that I never really considered getting, um, for a long time because it's very pricey, and also I wasn't really a wildlife birder type photographer. And if you guys have been following me on my Instagram and Flickr pages, you'll see that I've been posting a lot of bird type photos, mostly with the 75 to 300 kit lens that I was happy with because I only paid like $400 for it, a few years ago. But it didn't get much use. Because again, it's a tough lens to work with when the light is low and it's not super tack sharp, at and when the light gets low and you start cranking up the ISO and you have to crop in. It's a lot of challenges with that lens when you don't have perfect lighting. But in good light and you can get in pretty close and you don't have to crop a whole lot, it's fantastic. And that's really true of any lens. When you get close enough to a subject, just about any lens will give you really nice details. And so it's all really about magnification, right? And how much you have to crop. And when lenses are very, very sharp, it gives you more cropping ability and better low light capability. Meaning you can raise the ISO a little bit, but still get good detail. And those things were not critical to me when I was not shooting birds, especially smaller birds, because they're so tiny and you're cropping down to less than 1 megapixel sometimes to get the image. And then, like I said, I was usually at a pretty high ISO, 1600, 3200. I have a few images up that are like 20,000, 40,000 ISO. Uh, and they were okay, just for fun. It's okay. But now that I have the Olympus or OM system OM-1, taking bird photography, particularly birds in flight, is piece of cake. It's almost, I feel like I'm cheating almost. Like David Tellett was telling me yesterday on the photo walk with the photography club. I mean, he just said, "Hey, there's some geese over there," and it's like, bam! I just flip around, bang! I get it. It's like no problem at all. Whereas before, uh, I had to concentrate on the zone focusing, right? Just use the center group of focus points, and then can do continuous autofocus tracking, or not tracking, but continuous autofocus. But now with the subject detect in the OM1, um, I mean, within a fraction of a second, like the first couple of frames might be out of focus, but as soon as the lens catches up, uh, in the autofocusing motors, once it nails focus, it keeps up really well. And all I have to do is just keep the bird in the frame and it will focus. It's pretty amazing. So with that experience with the 75 to 300, I said now is the time that I can sort of justify a 300 millimeter f4 Pro because I'm just going to get the shot. I'm not worried about the autofocus. And if I miss the autofocus, or let me rephrase that, if I don't get the shot, it's usually because of some other user error. Uh, like what I was finding is like I'll be at the wrong shutter speed. You have to be at a pretty fast shutter speed to capture birds in flight. Because a lot of times you're panning at the same time as you're um, attaining focus, and the bird's moving fast. So there's a lot of variables there that a fast shutter speed really takes care of. So what do I mean by fast shutter speed? Well, I would say, generally speaking, minimum 1/2000th of a second, even for the larger birds if they're really moving. And larger birds being like blue herons and eagles and hawks, minimum 1/2000th. 1/3000th seems to be a good speed for that. 1/4000th pretty much freezes everything until you get to the very small birds, the little chickadees and things like that. I've had to be at 1/4000th minimum. And I'm going to try faster shutter speeds, but then the challenge is you start killing all the light to the sensor and cranking your ISO up. And if you have to do that, if your ISO starts getting up above 32 or 6400, you probably don't have enough light, and birding's going to be tough. So, for example, this morning is very cloudy, and last night or when I woke up this morning, I was thinking maybe I'll go out to Huntley Meadows. I'll call Dave and say, hey, let's go. But by 7:30, I could see that the clouds were coming in, and if it's cloudy out, I'm not going to go out. Even with the 300 f4, um, it's tough. It's tough to get enough light to keep your shutter speeds up. So I will, if I go out, it's on a cloudy day. I'm going to look for more birds and trees and things like that. But the images are not, they're very dull when the light is flat. So I'm going to try and only go out at times when the lighting is good, which, duh, right? That's when you should go out, is when lighting's good. And one of the things I might do, though, is start bringing the flash with me so that when the lighting is poor, I can use a flash, to illuminate the subject. But before I do that, I need to do a little more research and see how disruptive that is to wildlife in general. Seems like it should be okay, but if anyone has any experience, because I see a lot of bird photography where they do use flash, so that kind of implies it might be okay. But I don't want to disturb the birds too much with flash. But if they are sort of impervious to it, or generally it doesn't bother them, that's really the ideal way. Because I've seen a lot of, particularly like hummingbirds. I've seen a lot of hummingbird shots, and when you use flash, your results are so much better. So I set up a bird feeder, hummingbird feeder. I don't think I'm ever going to get any hummingbirds in my backyard, but I'm going to try. My neighbor has one also, and she hasn't gotten anything yet. But there are places around that I can go to that do have. I don't know how reliable they are, but I've seen hummingbirds at these other places, parks and things, where they have them set up. Because what I'm finding is generally, it's best to have a nice bushy tree kind of area with flowers, and that's what kind of attracts hummingbirds. They like the security from predators, to be able to run into a bush or tree, and they also like flowers, obviously, right? That's how they get their nutrition. And I have none of that in my backyard. I got a tree, and I got a lot of trees behind the fence, but I don't have any flowers that would have ever attracted them to begin with. And so I might try and plant some flowers. Yeah, I'm going that way, right? I'm going full on butterfly. I want to do some butterfly photography with the new lens. When they start coming out, it's just the flowers aren't quite out yet. My tulips have bloomed. I have tulips that bloom every year in the front, and some daffodils. But those aren't hardcore butterfly type plants, right? You need butterfly flowers. So I might look online and see what's good for that. But anyhow, let me take a look at the chat, see who's come in. CNH, good to see you. David Tellett, David Crooks, Jeff Painter, Christine, Robert, good to see you. Plato, Seraphin, George. Wow, that's awesome. John Thomas, good to see you. Yeah, it's cloudy in the UK. I see. It's almost always as though, is what I understand. And David says overall flash does not bother birds. That's good. Birds at my feeder table don't seem to notice it at all. That's good. Does flash reach? Yeah, you need a pretty powerful flash. But any extra light helps. You know, if the birds are like I did try a couple of times a couple of years ago with flash, and I'm gonna have to experiment and see which flash works best. Right now, it seems like I can get away with the TT350, which is a small flash, but that'll be good enough for birds and trees and things. Birds in flight or birds that are pretty far away, I'll probably need to crank out my 8200, something a little more powerful that'll reach, which is going to be an off-camera flash. So I'm going to hand hold, and so I don't know if I can do all that. But I've never seen any birders out with flash on their camera. And, because I've always been going out in good light, but, the best pictures I've seen are with birds and flash. And, the other side for butterflies. That's interesting. David Tellett is also in the photo group, friend of mine here locally. And, we go to this park, Huntley Meadows. It's pretty reliable for catching all this variety of birds. So when you look at my photos, the smaller birds generally are in my backyard, the chickadees, the woodpeckers, things like that. And the larger birds, the ducks, the geese, the hawks, those are at Huntley Meadows. And they have they have some red-winged blackbirds there too, which are pretty regular. And David would know how many kinds of birds he's gotten there, all kinds, a lot more than I have. I wonder, a snoot. I don't know if a snoot would really help. Snoots, they narrow the beam of light. I think if the snoot had a lining inside of silver, right? Like a foil or silver lining inside, the snoot would maybe project a little more light. But generally speaking, snoots are just to narrow the beam of light, but it doesn't make the light any stronger in a particular area. As far as I know. I could be way off on that. I guarantee if the snoot has reflective material inside, it will help. And David says the better beamer magnifies the flash. I have to look at that. I guess that's some sort of, I think it's like a Fresnel lens or something that's been modified to fit a flash. I could try that. I've seen it. I've seen these flash, adapters. I guess, what do you call it? A beamer? I have to look into that and see what I can use with the flashes I have. I don't want to have to buy a whole new flash, but I got so many different flashes. They're probably, just strap on the front and fit generically to any flash head. And Archie Kins is here from Dubai. Good to see you. So let's talk about this lens a little bit and this camera. Uh, so this is the 300 f4 Pro with the Olympus OM-1, and it's heavy. Okay, I'm not used to this. I'm used to my 75 to 300 and all my other kit lenses, right? Plastic Fantastics and small primes. So this is a beast to me. I mean, they always talk about how small and light this is compared to, uh, 35 millimeter equivalent lenses, but for micro four thirds, man, this you ain't kidding around. This thing is heavy. So I have this strap mounted to the base here on the tripod mount, and I carry this around. This is a Black Rapid that I got from Marco. Thank you, Marco. I'm putting it to good use now. Uh, and like carrying it like this is okay, because the camera just hangs off my shoulder. I don't feel it, but while I'm shooting, it's taking me. It's yeah. I have to get used to working with a heavier camera. I've noticed like my middle finger and my grip fingers are getting tired because I'm just not used to handling such a large lens. And I did get a HD, or I got a quality UV filter to put on the front, which technically I guess might impact image quality, but it's not enough that I'm going to worry about it, you know. But I do want to protect the front element best I can, because this lens hood is plastic, which is okay, but you have to be like, if you try and push it down on one side, it's tough because there's this wiggle in it, so you have to be very conscious to push it down straight. So, but I appreciate that the lens hood is built in. That way I can pack it away into my bag, and it does fit. It does fit in my favorite bag here, no problem. I have to lay it down sideways, but it goes right in, and and I still have room to carry my vlogging gear and other stuff. So I'm pretty happy that the size is not so overwhelming that I have to get a bigger bag to carry it. I can get away with the same bag, but man, this this is heavy. I don't know what this weighs total, but it's heavy. And yeah, you support it with the left hand, but because I have this loop down here, it's not comfortable. I saw somebody, they cut a tennis ball and wrapped it around the base here to make it more comfortable to hold. So I might do that, even though it looks kind of goofy. I might put a tennis ball onto here and see if that helps with hand holding, because it's not comfortable with this plate here. So like when I'm holding it one-handed, this is what I mean. My fingers here get tired. So you have to support the lens like this, and then this hand just becomes your control, right? The dials and buttons and stuff. But other than that, yeah, the build quality is awesome. I'm not trying to do a review on it, but I just wanted to kind of tell you my first impressions and experience. I've disabled the focus clutch on it because this thing is very loose. It's very easy to engage and disengage. So this is the manual focus clutch, where if you pull it back, I think it manually focuses, and then you push it up for autofocus. But I've disabled that in the menu. There's also the distance limiter here, which is awesome, but I have to get used to what setting it's on. I'm just going to leave it on to, to cover the entire range. But you can have it limit the focus automatically with this button here, which is very convenient. So to help you focus on distance objects a lot faster. But what happened is sometimes I'll be focusing on distant objects and then have the focus limiter set for, what's it, 4 meters. and out. And then I'll see a bird. Man, a cardinal landed right in front of me, like 3 meters away. And I couldn't get focus on it because I had the focus limiter set. And I was like, oh, and then by the time I realized what was happening, it flew away, and I didn't get one in focus. Uh, so handling and everything, it's heavy. It's heavy. So if you're not used to using heavy lenses, that's the first thing you have to get used to is the size and weight of it. Despite all the stuff online saying, oh, man, this is not a heavy lens. It is heavy. Now, funny thing is when I was using this on the M1X, it didn't feel heavy at all because it's a bigger camera. So it just felt more balanced, I guess. But even on the OM-1, this is pretty much the limit, or I would say beyond the limit of what you really should use with a camera like this, or camera this size. But it's okay. I'll get used to it. Maybe the tennis ball will help. I tried to do something I saw where some people, they like to put the tripod mount upside down like this, right? And then they carry the camera around like this, or it hangs off their strap like this, which is nice. I like that. But then I realized when I tried to put it up to my eye, the strap gets in the way of the viewfinder, and you have to move this out of the way. When it's on my shoulder, this strap is always like right in the middle. So that didn't work for me. I'm going to have to keep this tripod mount underneath, which when you're carrying your camera off your shoulder, it's going to hang upside down by your waist, which is okay, but it's not as nice as if it was hanging this way. But then, like I said, the strap kind of gets in the way. What else can I tell you? Any questions about that lens? Because I have it. I can answer some questions about it. If you don't have it, if you've been thinking about it, I don't recommend getting the lens until you really, build up your skill set of using a long lens, because it's only like a 4-degree angle of view. So you're going to have to get really good at spotting a bird and tracking it using a long lens in a very narrow field of view, which I'm getting better. I practiced yesterday a little bit on some swallows, and I did get a few shots of the swallows. But man, if you want to practice targeting, practice using swallows. I tell you, those things are fast, and then if you get an OM-1 to pair with this lens, you're going to easily acquire a lot of shots that would have been really difficult on any other camera, Olympus camera. Like I said, unless your skill set's already pretty high. If you have a very high skill set and you're good with group focusing, the little center group, and this lens, I mean, that's how everybody did it until this camera came out, right? And they're getting great hit rates. But I can tell you the OM-1 just makes it a breeze to once you get the bird in the frame, it's going to be in focus. Okay, let me see. Check the oh, that's not a bad idea. I thought about that. Maybe off to the side, right? So I think what he means is something like this. So then the camera hangs sideways, right? And then when I pick it up, yeah, the strap wouldn't be in the way. I'll try that for a while and see. And actually holding it down here is more comfortable. That's not a bad idea. That's awesome. Good tip. I should have tried. I don't know why I didn't try that when I was in the field, because I tried it upside down and I said, well, that doesn't work because of the strap. So I put it back. But this is, yeah, this is pretty handy. Feels good. This is a lot more comfortable. So let me tell you, the palm of my hand was kind of irritated the whole time I was out in the field because of this little knuckle down here. Uh, but like this, that's pretty sweet. That's a good tip. And Roberto's asking, is the F4? It helps a lot. It helps a lot immensely because you think about it. The only other options in Olympus, uh, I think Panasonic has a good option, but anyway, on the Olympus side, you're at F6 something, minimum F6. Stop and a half, stop and a third at a minimum, or stop and 2/3 versus the 75 to 300. So what does that mean like in real life? So like if I'm on the 75 to 300, I could be at ISO 10,000, but on this camera, I could be at like ISO 3200. I mean, it's like a huge difference in terms of ISO. So that allows me to crank my shutter speed up without, you know, a huge penalty on the ISO like I used to have. Uh, so yeah, it makes a big difference because if you can get your ISO down to about 3200 with this lens, you still get plenty of detail. And because it's just so sharp that the noise, when you layer the high ISO noise on top of a sharp image, it's not as bad as layering high ISO noise on top of an unsharp or not tack sharp image. So it makes a big difference. I mean, take any ISO number and take at least a stop off. I mean, you're at 6400 with this lens. You're at 3200 minimum. But like I said, it's more like a stop and 2/3 difference between this and my 75 to 300. So it's almost a full two stops, which is two stops would be 8 times more light, right? Or I'm sorry, 4 times more light. So you're letting 4 times as much light in with this lens than you are with the kit lens. Now, Panasonic has some good options. I don't remember what the 100 to 400 is. I think it only goes up to 5.6, so it's only a stop difference. And then they also have a 200 millimeter f2.8, which is actually a stop faster than this with a shorter focal length. You add the teleconverter, you're kind of back up to f4 on that lens. But people say it's actually sharper than the 300 sans the teleconverter. Once you add the teleconverter, it probably evens out. But with this, when you use an Olympus lens on Olympus body, you have the advantage of dual sync, right? The image stabilization in the camera will work together with the image stabilization in the lens. And it feels good. I mean, I don't have enough field time with either lens to tell you if the image stabilization is, way better now than it was with my kit lens. I'll have to I have to get a little more field time. But in theory, the dual sync should give me better stabilization. And Lissa says the 300 millimeter depth of field is more important for big birds. High F numbers is sometimes better if the image is not look soft. Roger House has a video. Yeah. So if you're close, yeah, you want to stop your aperture down to 5.6 or f8 if the birds are, say, within a few meters, right? But a lot of times the birds are, 20, 30 meters out, and your depth of field is usually sufficient, though I have noticed it's still a little bit shallow, even at that distance. And I've had to, I haven't done anything yet because I don't have enough field time, but I've noticed it. I've noticed that even if f4 at distance, sometimes the depth of field is not quite enough. But I'll get practice. Well, the more I practice with it, the better feel I'll get for it. I can show you guys maybe. Yeah, I posted some new stuff here. Let's see. Oh, this one. Okay. So, yeah, swallows. Most of the swallow shots were out of focus because they were just moving in and out of frame so quick the camera didn't get a chance to focus on it. But once in a while, I did get one. But I think with a little practice, if I can keep it in the frame long enough for the camera to nail focus on it, I'll get some more interesting shots. And I was a bit underexposed on this shot, so I had to pull the shadows. So the detail's not great on this, and it was so small in the frame. I'll pull up the original raw images so you can see how much I'm actually cropping. This is 100% crop right here. Let me go back while that's loading. So this one was what? Come on. This is at 300 millimeters, 1/2000th of a second, which is too slow for this bird. It needs to be 1/4000th for a tiny bird like this, ISO 200. So again, this is getting experience in the field, right? This one here, I mean, you can see the light was good. I'm at f4, 1/2000th of a second. These are good settings for this particular shot, and there's pretty good detail here. I didn't have to crop quite as much, but it was quite small in the frame. This was a good. Now this reminds me of one issue I have with this lens in terms of its optical quality. But the light wasn't quite as good. This was earlier in the morning, so I'm at 1/2000th at ISO 2000. But you can see it cleaned up. It cleaned up rather nicely. And you know, of course, I'm using Topaz, excuse me, Topaz Sharpen AI to kind of clean up the noise and stuff. But if you look at the branches back here and some of the background blur, part of this is because of the denoise AI. I'm sorry, the Sharpen AI was trying to sharpen things that shouldn't be sharpened. So when we look at the original image, like right where my mouse is now, you can see some horizontal lines. Just ignore this blur. I tried to fix this in Lightroom a little bit, but it's still there. Let me stop moving it so YouTube can keep up. But I'll move my mouse. See where my mouse is? I've noticed that the bokeh on this lens can be a little bit busy with sticks and branches sometimes. I'll pull up the original raw image for you. I think, oh, I have it right here. Okay, good. It was the last thing I was looking at. Let's see, that's the edit. That is, I was just messing around there with some double exposure. Here's the original, right? The raw image. Oh, no, that's a similar image. That's not the same one. Where's the original raw? Here it is. This give you an idea of the capture rate, though. That's one frame. Here's the second frame, third frame. This is a good shot. Look how fast that is. I believe I was in pro capture mode, 50 frames per second. Anyway, let's go back to this original and talk about the. So you can see the depth of field is a little shallow. So this guy was a little bit out of focus at ISO 2000. The focus point seems to be more up in here, right in here. And then with the processing that I did with the Sharpen AI, it did a good job. But let's look at the bokeh real quick. That's too close. That's 200%. Okay, this is one. See these horizontal lines? Um, this is a little distracting, right? I mean, it's very subtle. Who cares? But if I want to be critical about the optical quality of the lens, these are things that I feel like I hadn't noticed before, like on my 75 to 300, these kind of lines. And let's see, what else can I talk about? Now, if you look at the tips of the feathers here, they're slightly blurred because of motion blur. So you can see that even, because this is a medium-sized bird, right? 1/2000th just didn't cut it. 1/3000th would have really froze the action. So if we go, okay, now see, by the second frame, it nailed the focus. This is tack sharp. This is in focus. It just needs to be processed. I think Lightroom's added its sharpening to it. But there's the busy lines over here, right? That I just, and what it is, the branches that are protruding out from the sticks and stuff. That's what these are. And they just get a little bit distracting. So when I'm using the Topaz Sharpen AI, it's sharpening those lines up. So what I had to do is I had to go back into Lightroom and brush them out with a soft brush. But here's a good example. You can see there's motion blur on the wings, and or this could be a depth of field issue, right? Maybe it's just tack sharp right here in the center, but then we lose. But more likely, this is not depth of field. More likely, this is a motion blur from the speed of the wings. Let's see. And that's the next frame. Next frame. Let's look at this one. Yeah, that's looking good. Less motion blur. So my guess is that it's mostly, so this is what I mean. I go back and I analyze all of my photos and try and determine, what would have been better. Maybe a higher aperture for more depth of field, maybe a faster shutter speed so there's less motion blur. So in this particular case, my gut feeling is I need a faster shutter speed, and that would have froze the action a little better. And then he's going down, down, down. Let's check the bottom corner of the frame. Still looking good. And then next frame, pretty much out of frame. And then it probably went over here to focus. Yeah, that's tack sharp. So I'll have to inspect. I mean, I don't know how reliable it is. I'll have to inspect these in Olympus Workspace or OM Workspace and see where the focus point is. Because clearly now the focus point is here on this other duck. And that's something I'm going to have to analyze. Let's see what else I got. I've already pruned this somewhat, but you can see I still got 2,000 images here I need to go through. I took about 3,000 shots this day, all because of Pro Capture and high-speed shutter, right? You can burn through 3,000 shots in about an hour. And my battery was down to 50%. So this is on the Olympus OM-1. So I burned through 3,000 images. My battery's down to 50%. And that's a little bit shorter than I'm used to. And I think that's partially because this lens, is taking up a lot of juice with the IBIS built in. Because this is the first lens I've owned that has image stabilization in the lens. And this is the first lens I've owned that has image stabilization built in. in addition to, the camera. So it's definitely taking a little more juice out of the battery, because I wouldn't have expected 3,000 shots to take me down 50%. And I mean, not that that's not great, that's awesome. I'd have probably gone another hour, maybe 2 hours, um, before the battery was totally gone, and end up with 10,000 shots. But that's one thing though. I've never, I'm still waiting for my second battery to come in. I haven't had to worry about it. I've always had enough battery to get through any photo walk that I've taken this camera on. All right, so let me stop here and check the chat. Mike says he really enjoyed the talk. Yeah, Emily was awesome. It was great having her on the stream. And the subject matter, I've tried that. Yeah, I've tried it. It works pretty well. I mean, I have to work with it a little more. Did I use? Yes, I did use Pro Capture, on and off. I can't tell you specifically which shots I did Pro Capture and which ones I didn't, but I was kind of alternating between sequential high at 20 frames per second, and also I'm not sequential high, just standard sequential shooting at 20 frames per second. But then I was using Pro Capture also, and that one was running the regular Pro Capture, not the high speed. I was running the 25 frames per second Pro Capture, 20 frames per second continuous shutter. I didn't use any of the high speed options, if I recall. Mainly because I don't want to capture 10,000 images when 3,000 would do it. And once I get a little more practice in, then I think I can get used to maybe capturing at 50 frames per second, and working within the buffer limits. And there's some other settings. So I'm going to do another video once I've got a little more field time with different settings, what I think works, workflow that works for me to capture the images I've been capturing. And let's see. Yeah, use a minimum 25/100th of a second. Yeah, if they're flying, definitely if they're flying. Is Topaz Lab Suite better than DxO's? Right now it is, because DxO doesn't support the OM-1. And I am finding I may do a video on that this week as well, because it may be a while before DxO has the denoising suite for OM-1. Because actually I'm very happy with the results with Topaz right now. Because I'm not trying to denoise 25,000 ISO images. I mean, I have some that I've done, but I'm pretty happy so far. So, but I can't wait for DxO to support the OM-1, because I still feel DxO, and I use the Photolab 5 Elite, which includes the deep prime that is, that does a good job of denoising. And the reason I prefer DxO Photolab is because, you can control the amount of denoising, the amount of sharpening, and you just have more control over the processing the image, versus, some people like to buy the pure raw separate module. You don't get quite as much control in the pure raw module as you do with the Photolab 5. But also the Photolab 5, the optics module, where it does optical corrections to the lens, is also excellent. And it's something that Topaz does not do, as far as I know, is really when it's, and you can work with raw files directly with DxO. Topaz, I think you can do that now, but I haven't I haven't tried that, but it doesn't have, I don't think, the same optical uh, corrections and precision with the lenses like DxO does. And I feel like DxO does a better job with the lenses on the Olympus cameras, or any camera that it supports, I should say. Because I just apply an optical correction without any denoising or anything else. Just the optical corrections alone, I see a marked improvement in sharpness. And I have not seen that in any other software, and I've used, a little bit of everything, right? And DxO has always done the best job. And then you throw on the deep prime processing for noise and the fine controls that you get with the Photolab 5 Elite. I feel like I'll get better results with DxO ultimately. But Topaz is a lot more flexible, right? I can edit a JPEG, I can edit just about anything and denoise it. It doesn't rely on the raw data. And you have a lot of controls. I mean, almost to the point that it's you have to. They need to simplify the interface a little bit in Topaz, and I'm talking about the Sharpen AI module. It's there's just too many choices because they have like you can correct, like they have an algorithm for motion blur, an algorithm for out of focus, an algorithm for being too soft, which is not too dissimilar from being out of focus. But let's say you've nailed focus, but it's still soft, right? For whatever reason, there's a different algorithm. And then they have sliders to adjust blur and noise. I'll just pull it up. Let me grab a different image. I'll go to the other screen here. So you just right click on a raw image, edit, Topaz, Sharpen AI. Oh, nobody can see. Sorry, I don't know why my screen went out. Let me cancel this and start over real quick. I forgot to do something anyway. Where's my mouse? So this is the, let me delete this. All right, so here, let's process this raw image. So we right click it, edit in. Oh, so I almost did it again. One thing I need to do is normally I have this turned off, but I since I updated to Windows 11, I haven't changed this yet. But normally I turn off any noise reduction that Lightroom does, and then I edit in Topaz Sharpen AI. And I'm running in silent mode on my laptop, so the processing might be a little bit slow. Let me change it back. Oh. Okay, turbo mode. So you might hear some fan noise now. Okay, so my screen is a little bit okay. We're good now. All right, so here it's applied. Let me move over here. So it's applying the denoising now, right? Look at the bottom left, there's a progress bar. And I have all these choices: motion blur, out of focus, too soft, and then within that, normal, very noisy, very blurry. Uh, and let's do a comparison, split view, so you can see the difference. But yeah, it does an amazing job. Um, and I'm pretty happy with this. But then there's the additional sliders down here. I found that most of the time I can put suppressed noise down to 0, and it will give me it'll still take out the noise even at 0, because I'm trying to minimize any kind of softness, so I reduce the noise. Uh, but if I go, say, to motion blur, right? Because there's motion blur here clearly, right? In the wingtips, let's try that. Motion blur, very noisy. And we'll give that 10 or 15 seconds to process. Come on. There we go. Um, Now, I want to compare this particular noise reduction algorithm to the one I just did. I shouldn't have to wait very long because it's already processed it once. Oh. But what I'm looking at is the duck's head here. It looked a little bit too soft. Not soft, but it looked too glossy, Uh, okay, now it's updating. See, I think the detail's a little bit better here along the bottom of this duck's jaw or head. And if I go back to this one, I feel like I lost some detail. And then I click on this one, and it may be very hard to see in the stream, but there's just a tiny bit more detail in the hair and along the jawline. Let me go back here. And now the detail's a little bit softer up in here. And then if I do something like this, motion blur normal, this one's never worked well for me, this particular option. We'll give that. This is like my old photo editing streams, right? Yeah, it didn't do anything hardly. So for me, I would and then the last thing I can try is too soft. And I haven't really played with the sliders here. You can adjust those. Yeah, 3,000 shots, easy, easy. When you're doing pro capture and high speed shutter, you'll burn through those. Okay, this one. Now that this finished, the detail is not quite as crisp. It's a little more natural though. Uh, this is a little bit more natural processing that I could take into um, Lightroom and do a little bit more sharpening in Lightroom. So I almost prefer this particular model, but when I'm doing nature, birds, and things like that, I'm not quite as sensitive to being to having it look so very natural. If I was doing a portrait of somebody, a human face or person, I would probably use this model on that kind of image than I would with this image. I would rather use this out of focus, very noisy, because it just gives the image a little bit more bite, even though it's not quite as natural. It seems to give the image just a little more bite. So we'll let this load all apply, then we'll go back and do a minor edit in Lightroom. And then Stelios has a question. I don't think I can answer this one, but I'll put it up so you guys can look at it while this is updating. So I'm going to apply this and go into Lightroom. Stelios says, sorry if discussed this in the past. Is the Panasonic 1-300 sharper than the Olympus 75-300? Or any other better options at a similar price, for example, a Nikon 70-300 with adapter? I can partially answer this. Using an adapter is generally not a good idea, especially with zoom lenses, because when you're zooming in and out, the image stabilization doesn't know what focal length you're at, and it's not going to properly stabilize the lens. So a lot of times you have to turn the stabilizer off when you're using a zoom lens, adapting a zoom lens, and use very, very high shutter speeds. So I don't recommend birding with a 70-300 for that reason alone. And then the second thing is the 100-300 or the 75-300. I would, if you have an Olympus body, buy the Olympus lens, because you will lose some capabilities, I think, in pro capture potentially when you're using a generic lens. Or I'm not generic, but Panasonic lens versus the Olympus lens. Like, I think you might lose pro capture high. I'd have to put a Panasonic lens on to see. I'll do that. Give me a second. Let me go through this image real quick, and then I'll come back to your question here. And if anybody in the comments want to make recommendations for Stelios, please do. So here's the image processed, and I think it looks really amazing. But look at the bokeh here. These lines are appearing again. So what I did was I got my Lightroom brush, and I turned the texture way down, the clarity a little bit down, and then I just did this, and I brushed it out to minimize that effect. And there's also a sharpness thing here, so that's what I did on some of the images. Let me go up here. There's a lot of it up here, right? So if I brush this, I can soften that out like so. So when I was processing the other image, I took a little time to do all of that, and then I just cropped it so it's more of an environmental type shot, so you can see. So I want to get this guy in with this guy in, try and put them in 1/3 of the frame. And that's how it framed that shot. Just click auto here. See the bokeh back here? Let me fix some of this. I don't like all this busyness. Okay, good enough. Pull the blacks in a little bit, push the whites, just to give the image a little more contrast. Pull in some of the highlights, and just add a slight vignette, feather it. Maybe back that off a little bit. There. And that's that's image number 2 out of this sequence. I think that looks great, And this is an ISO 2000 image with Topaz Sharpen AI. and some editing in Lightroom. The bokeh here is still a little bit busy. I don't know why I'm editing this picture. Nobody cares, right? Maybe do a little bit more work in here. Okay. But you get the idea. I would take a little time and clean up some of the background because part of that busyness is amplified by the Sharpen AI algorithm, right? But overall, that's a pretty slick image, I think. Okay. Let me go back to Stelios' question here. Oh, yeah, I was going to put a Panasonic lens on, and I know you lose focus stacking. Not that you would do that with a telephoto, but where's my Panasonic? All right, I have a Panasonic lens here. This is my work camera. I use this for work. So if I go into let's pull this up. Oh, I'll put the lens cap on so it's easier. All right. So let's go into the menu and see what happens here. Oh, let me pull this off. This is not going to... A lot of things get disabled when I plug the HDMI in. So I'm just going to have to verbally tell you. So let's go to the shutter modes. No, Pro Capture high speed still works. And so I lose focus stacking, but high res still works. Yeah, everything, all right. So on the OM-1, when you use a Panasonic lens, it looks like all the shutter modes still work. The only thing I saw really missing was the focus stacking. And if the lens has image stabilization built in, the Panasonic lens, a lot of them do, you probably want to use, especially on telephoto, you want to use the image stabilization in the lens versus the one in the body. You'll have to experiment and probably figure out which one does a better job, but they won't work together, right? The Sync IS will not work together with Panasonic lenses. So you'll have to pick one when it comes to image stabilization. And that's the only feedback I can give you. In terms of sharpness of the two lenses, I don't know which one is sharper. I know the 75 to 300 gives me terrific images. Like let me show you an image with the 75 to 300 that just came out really freaking amazing. This one. I mean, this is my favorite picture. This was in my backyard. But yeah, this, and of course I processed this with Sharpen AI and all of that. But this is the kind of image I got with the 75 to 300. And if you look at the settings, I'm at 179 millimeters, 1/4000th, ISO 1600, and I'm wide open at f5.9. Let's look at another one. This is with the 75 to 300, ISO 2000, wide open at 300 millimeters. So I'm all the way out, and you can see I still got some really good details. A little bit blown out here on the highlights. I had to pull those back, so I lost some detail there. But where the lens caught focus, I mean, it's, even in the eye, look at the eye. You can see the little pupil in the eye. And this is almost 100% crop. Uh, this is the 75 to 300. Look at the ISO on this. 40,000 ISO, 1/4000th of a second, 300 millimeters. And processed with topaz. This one I think I used topaz denoise instead of topaz sharpen, because topaz sharpen did not get rid of the noise as well as topaz denoise. But I still got really, I can get in a little. So this is not cropped in too much, the original image. But yeah, I still got really amazing detail out of that lens. So for me, right now that lens is on sale for $450 because it's birding month or something. April is birding month with the OM system. So they have all, I think most of their telephoto lenses on sale, and you can get a really good deal. So I would just get the 75 to 300 is my advice over the 100 to 300. Mike is here. Good morning. Yeah, for swallows, you might try adjusting. I had everything set. I had +2 sensitivity, and I had everything maxed out to be fastest and most sensitive when I was shooting. Let's see. Oh, Gigafish is here. Hi, Gigafish. Uh, yeah, sorry about the blue screen earlier. And Jesse's here. Good to see you. And then Christine says, do those 3,000 shots count towards the total number of shutter counts? I don't know how the OM-1 does it now, but I believe the the camera internals keep track of both silent shutters and mechanical shutters. I believe it keeps track of both. Technically, I don't think you need to count the silent shutter count. But yeah, I don't have a straight answer for you though, to be honest. But if somebody were selling me a camera and they told me it had 100,000 clicks on it, I would, if they were silent shutter clicks, I'd be fine. If they were mechanical shutter clicks, then I would have to, uh, you know, account for that in the price, right? If I were buying it. Yeah, imagine going. It's not that hard actually, um, because I don't know. It's not that hard. I just go into a grid, and I'll flip through them very quickly. I'll find one or two compositions that I like, flag those, and delete the rest. It's no big deal. Yeah, I'm on the dark side now. I need to get out and do some street photography or some photography. Where I'm kind of more in my element. But I'm enjoying this wildlife so much that uh, maybe it's just a phase. I don't know, but it's a lot of fun, and I want to get good enough to where I can actually give people some advice on it. Because, I'm not a wildlife guy, but if I can get up to speed and get some decent images, to a point to where I feel confident I can give some advice. Because I mean, every genre has its general parameters, right? I mean, I could give you some general idea of what to do when you go out and shoot any kind of photography, but that's very different than knowing it academically versus knowing it when you're in the field, right? Uh, so once I get some more field time, I might do some maybe a live stream or a video on wildlife photography settings, because people are going to have a lot of questions, right? And it'd be very difficult in a short video to address them properly. uh, it's like I could do a video on architecture, right? Doing real estate photography, getting your lines straight, balancing, perspective, all of that. um, but that's not a popular thing, right? So I do the vlogs, which kind of give you an idea of how to do that kind of photography, but I haven't done like a tutorial video on it. I do actually have one video that's really good at explaining a lot of that, but wildlife photography or any kind of photography, it's important. You want to hear it from somebody that has time in the field and has experience, and not just somebody that can just look in a manual and say, well, these are good settings, right? It's not just the settings that help you to get good images. You have to talk about when you're in the field, what the lighting is like. Like I talked a little this morning, it's cloudy out. I'm not going to go out because I know the images are not going to be great. Uh, for that kind of photography with the lenses I have. So there's a lot of things you can talk about outside of just camera settings, um, when you're doing photography, that you don't really know until you get some experience in the field and start doing it on a regular basis. And that to me would be much more valuable than just saying, yes, set your shutter speed to 1/3000th of a second, auto ISO, continuous autofocus, group, blah blah blah, right? I could walk through all the settings now, but it's better if I have some experience in the field and I can say with a little more confidence and a little more authority that, yeah, you want to, yeah, these settings are good, but if you're taking a picture like this, you need to adjust this setting here a little bit. And you want to save that as a custom setting so you can quickly switch back and forth between these two very small things if you want to optimize your image in the field, um, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Yeah, the 75 to 300, when you have enough light, like if you can get the ISOs down and you get close enough to the subject, you can get amazing images. Like that bluebird image, I was only at 179 millimeters, and I filled most of the frames, so I got really good detail. This image here I took from my back door out to the yard, so it was pretty far away. Um, this is a 75 to 300. What's my shutter speed? 1/3000th. Even at 1/3000th of a second, there's still a little bit of motion blur here. But I was probably only about 3 or 4 meters away from this bird when I took the shot. Because look how much I can punch in. So I didn't have to crop a whole lot. And I'm at 270 millimeters, ISO 400. So I had good light and I was pretty close. This is another shot, that 75 to 300. I mean, you can see all the details. And 200 millimeters, 1/3000th, ISO 320. So again, from the settings, you can see I was in very good light and I was pretty close to the subject. So I'm getting really, really good shots with this lens. Now this shot I took with the 300 millimeter with a 2x teleconverter. And this is already at 100% crop minimum. um, Man, you got to see the original image. This was this one was at Huntley Meadows too. I think it was in this series. Let's see. No, it's after this. Yeah, I think it was in this series. This is the no, that's a different one. This is the 75 to 300. It did a good job, but hold on. What lens is this? Let's do 2x. All right. Um, so purple. So create a virtual copy. So I put a star. I just want to show you a comparison here. Create a virtual copy. So let's reset all. Reset all. On the left, I have the, oh, this is David's lens, the 100 to 400 at 400 millimeters. Dang it, that's not what I wanted to compare. This is the one I wanted. This one. And this one. So let me reset. Reset. Again, I pull up the wrong image. How? 75 to 300. Let's get this one. All right, this one is the one I wanted. This one. And this one. So reset and reset. So on the left here is the 75 to 300. On the right is the 300 millimeter with the 2x teleconverter. And if we punch in, you can just, you can see how much closer we can get with the 2x teleconverter. Now I can't remember why I'm looking at these images. It took me so long to put these together. But I could develop this one here, right? What am I at? ISO 400. So sharpen AI would be good. So let me turn off this. Turn off the color. Oops. Edit and sharpen. Okay, yeah, I'll have to work with it more, John. I just been kind of, blowing through it quickly. But yeah, if I could tell it not to sharpen those areas, that would be good. You really need to get some kind of AI software. Like I said, I'm familiar with Topaz and DxO. Wow, that did a great job. Like that. Let me crank this up and see if I can get just a little more out of it. Yeah, that's good enough. Okay. Um, this thing freezes when I'm doing this sharpening because it's using up all the processor speed. Hopefully my voice is not choppy, just the video. All right, I'll get to your question here, Mark Wolf. Um, so at this point, what I'd probably do is just do a little more sharpening with the and I mean, look, I'm gonna crop in down to less than 1 megapixel on this particular bird, kingfisher. Let's compose it there. Um, just add a little bit more contrast. Push the shadows up. Pull in a brush. Like so. Then do a tiny bit of clarity. Let's push the blues a little bit. Actually, I don't like this green. Put that back. Okay. Um, but yeah, I mean that's pretty amazing for 75 to 300 at distance, right? So this lens, like I said, is on sale for $450. So definitely get this lens. I mean, it did nearly as good a job as the 300 millimeter with a 2x teleconverter compared to that image. Although this image is a little better, but okay, let me go back to uh, the question here. Marked Wolf. Someone is selling me an Olympus EM1 Mark III. I assume the EM1 Mark III, because I think there is an Olympus E3 model back in the day. But anyhow, 14 to 150 for $200? No, then it's got to be the Olympus E3. That doesn't make sense to me. Oh, the 14 to 150, 2.8 to 3.5. Yeah, that's a smoking deal. But I would not, I don't know. That's a good deal. But I'm not familiar with the camera or the lens. But if you can get a body and lens together for $200 and it's in good shape, that's a deal, no matter how you slice it. But spending $200 for the intents and purposes that you're talking about, I probably wouldn't do it. I don't think the 14 to 150 will focus that well on the EM5 Mark II. The 4/3 lenses adapt much better to the EM1s because they have phase detect. Uh, for whatever reason, that's what I've heard. But I don't know. Maybe somebody else can chime in for you. I don't have a good. I can't give you a good recommendation. If you're planning to use the camera as is with that lens and body, for 200 bucks, I'd say go for it. But for the intents and purposes you have there, I don't have a good answer. Yeah, yeah. The 75 to 300. I mean, that's why I didn't buy the 300 millimeter f4 for a long time because I was like, oh, I can always use 75 to 300. And even when the 100 to 400 came out, I was like, the 75 to 300, it's pretty good lens already. Why do I want to spend 14 or 1500 more just to get a little better? Um, when I was not really a hardcore wildlife guy to begin with. But now, everyone, the 300 f4 is the best, right? Next to maybe the 150 to 400, though I'll never have that lens. But I've seen comparisons of the 300 f4 versus the 40 to 150 with a 2x teleconverter versus the 100 to 400, plus my own testing with the 100 to 400, my 75 to 300, and the 300 f4 I got to borrow from Bill Millhauser, which I really appreciate still. I'll never forget. Um, the 300 f4 just made the most sense. And I didn't really have to pay for it all the way. I was able to trade in a bunch of stuff to get it. I traded in a couple of my film cameras, which I paid virtually nothing for. But you know how the market is now for film cameras. I mean, I got 700 bucks for two film cameras. That I only spent. I spent 250 bucks for both of them, and I got so I made 500 bucks off those two there, and then I sold a couple of my lenses. I sold my 12 millimeter f2, my 14 to 150 lens, and uh, my Panasonic GX85 camera body, my 25 millimeter Panasonic lens, because I have another one. I have two 25 millimeter Panasonics for some reason. So I sold a bunch of stuff, and I only had to cover the difference, right? 800 bucks. So when I say sell, meaning I traded in everything at wholesale prices. So I got at least, I lost about 1/3 of what I could get if I sold it on eBay. But I I don't know. I just had to have it now, so I traded everything in to pay for this lens, and I had to come up with about 800 bucks on my own. So at that point, and that's the only way I could buy a lens like this is doing something like that. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, the 918, that's still on my short list. The EPL5, not so much. It's a great little camera, but that lens is, man, that's very tempting. How many more months, years is it going to take? I have no insight into that. I really don't. I wish I could, but I have no contact with OM Systems or OM System at all. I'm sure they know who I am, right? Because I got 400 videos and a couple hundred streams all about Olympus, but uh, yeah, they don't tell me nothing, obviously, because I have no formal relationship, and to some extent, I'd like to keep it that way. it keeps me unbiased to some extent. Well, unbiased is not the right word. It gives me a certain independence is the right word. I get a little more independence by not being affiliated with any particular company, because people ask me, like, what camera are you going to would you buy? What do you think about this camera or that camera? And I try to be honest and say, well, I'm a big fan of Olympus and OM system. I'm sure at the price point the OM-1 sells for, there may be other cameras that are very competitive or better, in some respects. But I don't know those cameras, right? I don't know how they perform in the field with birds and things compared to this directly side by side, because I have no field time with any other camera that would be competitive with this. But because I am biased towards OM systems and Olympus, I bought this. This is where I put my money. And it's not because I was able to compare this camera with other camera systems, because I just love the form factor. And so, yeah, when I make a recommendation, just consider I can make a decent recommendation within the Olympus OM system family, but I can't make a recommendation at any particular price point across all camera systems, right? I can't say, well, if somebody came to me and said, I got $2,000, how should I spend it, right? I wouldn't be able to say, um, well, if you're going to do this kind of photography, get the Sony or get the Canon, get the Nikon, get the OM system. I can't say that because I don't have any field time with any of those other cameras at those price points, right? But you can ask me anything about within a particular brand, OM system and Olympus, what camera I think is best for the kind of photography you do. Because you hear me all the time say EM10 Mark II. Man, that camera does 99% of what the OM1 does, you know, in some ways. In other ways, it fails miserably. I was thinking about doing a vlog where actually, I'd have to take my EM5 Mark II out, but it's pretty much the same as the EM10 Mark II, other than weather sealing and a couple other small things. And put that side by side with the OM1 and see what kind of pictures I get and compare them side by side and say, look, you know, with the OM1, I was able to nail all of these pictures because the autofocus is amazing on subject detect. And with the EM5 Mark II, my hit rate was much lower because my skill set is much lower, right? But the OM1 makes up for that skill set quite a bit. But if I had to rely on my skill set only, yeah, is there'd be no reason to upgrade to an OM1 if your skill set's already very high. The OM1 may not be the right choice, right? May not be a good to. It wouldn't make any sense to spend a couple $1,000 on an OM1 when you're already getting a 90% plus hit rate on your birds in flight photography. I just don't see the point, honestly. But what do I know? Yeah, it does deserve a lot of credit. It is really an amazing camera. Like I said, it's gotten me into area photography. I talked about it last week. I love this camera. Everything about it. For me, it was money well spent. And then system said the 300 f4 is superb lens, especially used with the 1.4. Only slight issue is then the narrow field of vision when shooting BIF, as no zoom to pull back. Yeah, dealing with, but I'm fine. Usually the birds are so far away anyway. When I was shooting with a 2x teleconverter, it was a little bit of a problem. Uh, Less so with the 1.4 and less so without any teleconverter. Um, I have a couple shots where I have with and without the teleconverter, and I was going to compare them side by side. Um, but ultimately, I think using a teleconverter, whether it's the 1.4 or the 2.0, um, you will get you'll get better shots rather than cropping without one. Is my general consensus. The trade-off being the narrow field of view. There's definitely some loss in quality. I mean, multiplying by 2x, you're going to lose some quality, but I think you can still resolve more detail than trying to crop 2x without a teleconverter. Wow, you're still waiting. That's brutal. I was very lucky, apparently, to get mine as fast as I did. I got mine what? Uh End of February, 1st of March, something like that. It's been a little over a month I've had this camera. Think about a pancake lens. Okay. Depends which pancake lens it is. What are the pros and cons of a pancake lens? Pros obviously are size and weight, small, and all of the pros of a pancake lens. They're more discreet, and if you want to talk about image quality, the Panasonic pancake lenses are excellent. The 20 millimeter, the 14 millimeter are very good. The Olympus 17 millimeter 2.8 pancake, I hear, is not quite as good as the Panasonic ones. The only other downside is the focusing is slow and a little bit crunchy. I hear, I hear that the autofocus is slow and noisy. So, yeah, I mean, it's not loud. I mean, if you're in the street, nobody's going to hear it. But if you're in a studio, you'll hear the difference, right? If you're indoors. But so I wouldn't worry about the sound from the autofocus motor so much outdoors and street. But I can't think of any compromises other than slower focusing. You know, I think image quality is right up there with any prime. Now, if you're talking about the pancake zoom lenses like the 14 to 42 Easy, again, there's really no cons. It's as good as any lens for street photography because you're not in street photography. You're not worried about tack sharp or uh, a lot of the things that you would be more critical of in other types of images. Street photography is more about the story and capturing the moment, and that's a lot more important than the technical quality of the image. But if a 20 millimeter f1.7, I think it is from Panasonic, the 14 millimeter f or 14 millimeter 2.5 from Panasonic, two excellent pancake lenses. And I think Lauren is one of the viewers here. He loves those lenses. Uh, he would be. I wish he was here. He could give you some good feedback on those. And I would love to have the 20 millimeter 1.7. I may get one eventually, but right now I have the Olympus 17 1.8, which is my street lens. And I know it's very sharp lens and it's pretty compact as it is. It's not a pancake lens, so to speak, but it's very compact for what it is. And that would be the only other thing I would recommend is you look at the 17 millimeter 1.8 from Olympus. It's an excellent lens and it's not too bulky, but it's not a pancake lens. That's for sure. Oh yeah, the 12 to 32 pancake lens is also really good. Um, it's actually, in my opinion, sharper than the Olympus uh, kit lenses and smaller and lighter. It's an awesome lens, and and for street photography, I like the wider field of view at 12 millimeters. It's pretty significant. You would think 12 to 14, not that big a deal, but when you're shooting on a regular basis, 12 millimeters is a big difference from 14 millimeters. And if you're using it with a Panasonic body, you get the added benefit of the image stabilization. I think it'll dual sync too, but don't quote me on that. But the key to street photography a lot of times is you need to be able to shoot in low light. And that's why these pancake primes are ideal because they're 1.7s, right? the 20 millimeter 1.7. Another good lens from Panasonic is the 15 millimeter. Uh, I think it's a 1.8. But Panasonic, that 15 millimeter, it's expensive, but it's awesome. That's a and it's not too big either. So look at the 15 millimeter from Panasonic and the 17 millimeter from Olympus, in addition to a 20 millimeter pancake, because you won't have the focusing issues with the slightly larger lenses like you will with the smaller 20 millimeter Panasonic being kind of noisy. Some people described it like as a meat grinder, but uh, it's not bad. I've seen it and heard it. It's not that bad, but if you want the ultimate in portability, the 20 millimeter 1.7 is an awesome choice. Oh, System Mature brought it up here. Yeah, the 15 millimeter 1.7. I wouldn't call it technically a pancake, but it's almost there. It's pretty much pancake. Um, and hello, Calvin, out there in Maine. Wow, Maine is such a beautiful state. I've seen images of people that live out there in Maine, and it's like you can just kind of point your camera in any direction and get a great shot up there. It's just too freaking cold. You notice like I'm sitting here, I'm cold, and it's 66 degrees in here, and I don't like it. I need to. I should crank this up a little bit. I got my little space heater here. Oh, it's just too cold up there for too long. There might be one or 2 weeks in Maine that might be warm enough. I'm gonna move south. Long story short, it's just too cold where I live. Oh, Randy's here. How's it going, Randy? I saw you got a video up now on black and white. I'm gonna have to watch that. Maybe film black and white actually, if I recall correctly. I saw that this morning, but I had still working on my taxes, so I didn't. Oh God. All right. Now I'm now I'm stressing out over my taxes. That's that. Let's not go there. Taxes suck though. I guess we should be happy with all the benefits we get along with it, but it's still that time of year where you just feel like, what are they doing with my money? Why are they taking it? You know. um, but I'm not going to complain. I'm very fortunate to live where I do and enjoy the benefits that I have because we pay taxes. And so that's that. But it's never fun doing the taxes, right? I don't have any video specifically about keystoning. Um, Even keystoning portraits. Wow, can't imagine that. That would gives the subject structure. Interesting. I haven't been too creative with my photography, to be honest. I'm still working on technique and getting composition and exposure, nailing focus. I'm still trying to get the fundamentals right personally, uh, up to such a high level that, or not a high level, but let me say, I want to get my photography up to a level that I can walk out on any day and get a decent image, go to any location in any kind of weather and get a decent image. But I can't. I can't do it. I have to go when the weather's nice, the sun is out. I have to go to a location that has photographic subjects. You know, I have to have everything lined up to get the kind of images I want. But there are people that will just go out, particularly, uh, journalist type photography, journalism. Those photographers, they can go out in any situation and get a good shot, right? Because they have to. They work. That's their job. And I'm not talking about trying to get journalistic type photos, but being able to just say, okay, it's cloudy today. Let me grab my 17 millimeter and go downtown to Alexandria and get some shots of these buildings because I think the low contrast and even lighting in black and white will look really good for this particular shot, right? Like I have to think it through right now and really, and then even though I said all that, I don't know if that's going to be the case when I get there. I'm just trying to imagine if I had to go out shooting right now, what would I go shoot in the location that I'm at to get a decent image? And things just don't snap like that for me. I have to think it through. I'd like to get to a point that I can just walk out and say, okay, I'm going to take this camera, this lens, I'm going to use this accessory, and I'm going to use this lighting, whatever I need, and I'm going to get an awesome shot today, right? Any day of the week, any kind of weather, any location, I want to be able to do that. And yeah, I'm a competent photographer. I can go out and get the exposure that I want, but I'm not going to get a good picture necessarily, right? I want to be able to go out and just go in my backyard and say, I'm going to get a shot of this today and it's going to be epic and I'm going to put this on my Instagram and get a million likes. I don't know if anybody's at that level, but uh, that's that to me is my goal. My ultimate goal is just to go out in any situation and get a really good shot, right? And then not only do that, but be able to show other people or teach other people how to do that. That would be my goal. Being creative, I'm going to leave that up to the artists like yourself, right? Where keystoning images. Architecturally, I know I need to keystone. I do that time to time. But doing it on portraits for more structure, that's like a totally foreign concept to me. Like, what the heck is that? I don't know. Uh, and if I did it, how would it look? To me, my visualization of what you're doing is like, why? Why are you doing that? But far be it for me to judge because what do I know? I'm not that creative. It might be a masterpiece what you're trying to do. Uh, and I'd be interested to see what you're talking about, to see if that's the kind of photography that I might be interested in looking into, or technique, I should say. Because someone came up to me yesterday and they were talking about they like the juxtaposition of man-made structures intermingled with nature or an area, not necessarily nature, but in an area. Um, like maybe this boardwalk was made 30 years ago. How's it holding up, and how is it serving a purpose within the location? This is when I was at Hunley Meadows yesterday. They have a boardwalk going through the marsh, right, or whatever they call it. And he thought the juxtaposition of this man-made boardwalk within the marsh was interesting to him, and he wanted to try to capture that. So, like I said, people have all their own ideas about being creative and doing things, and then that's really very low on my list of things to capture or how to capture things. And maybe that's the wrong approach. Maybe I should be approaching things more creatively. Uh, and then that's what I'm missing, and that's why I'm struggling. But right now, I don't feel like even, and I'll give you an example. Like if I go out right now to Hunley Meadows, I'm not confident I'm going to get a good picture because it's cloudy out. But if I were a better photographer, I'd be like, okay, it's cloudy at Huntley Meadows. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this lens, this camera, this flash, this accessory, and I'm going to take some great images today at Huntley Meadows. I'm just not at that point yet, right? Where I think I'm going to get some great images on a day like this, but somebody will. Some photographers out there, they can just go out in any location, any kind of conditions and get a great shot. So that's what I want to do. Yeah, when you go out, you get what you get, huh, Mike? I know, right? Yeah, that's what would happen to me today at Hunley Meadows. I might get something, I might not. I might surprise myself and say, "Well, I got lucky, I got this shot." But I'm not going out there with a high level of confidence in this kind of lighting. I got to figure out what the heck is running around in my attic. I went up to my attic the other day and I couldn't find any holes that they're coming in. How are they getting in there? I think they're getting in between the walls, not in the attic, but it's disturbing. Maybe they're just running on the roof and I think it's in the house. I don't know. Anyway, that is definitely something. And it's not a small animal like a squirrel. I mean, it might be a cat. It's got a little bit of heft to the thumping. But cats are kind of light footed. So I don't know. Maybe a raccoon. I don't know. It's something. Ugh. But okay, any questions on my new lens, the 300 f4 Pro? If you're thinking about getting it, I can give you some feedback on it. I did touch on this a little bit earlier. The new Olympus OM-1 camera. Um, I got a pretty good feel for this. I'm about 90% there. It's about another 10% of things that I need to figure out. Um, but I'm getting there, right? In terms of the technical side of what's available and what the camera can do. In terms of the image quality and the kind of images I get out of it, I have a very good feel for it now at all different ISOs. Um, so, like I said, a little more field time with it, and then I can really give a very strong recommendation for this camera for certain things and not so much for other things, right? If you're a street photographer, I can tell you right now, don't bother. You know, EM10 Mark II will get the job done. Because I talked about that in my last video, right? This is the camera that will get the job done. This camera is very specifically at this point is really sports, action, wildlife type photography. Someone did ask me, a few of you have asked me, how is it with people? So I'm going to be testing that. The weather's going to be nice this week, so I'll be testing it for people shots, mainly myself. I'll be walking. Damn, that thing is going to town. Anyway, um, I'm going to try and see how it does because it doesn't have like it has tracking, but I don't know how it's going to track a person or how the face detect works. Like if I turn my back, like a lot of sports action photography, the players are not always facing you, right? They're facing away from you, and you still want to get that shot. How is it going to focus on that? So I got to think of a way to test for that too, um, because maybe it's not amazing, maybe it sucks, right? I can't imagine that it would, but maybe. But I haven't been able to test for that. Um, yep, the 40 to 150. Yeah, that's a good lens. I do still have that lens. I almost traded it yesterday, but it's such a good little lens that I was like, I'm only going to get 50 bucks for it on trade. I don't think I don't think it's worth I think it's worth more than 50 bucks. I'm keeping it. And it'll be good to compare it against, the 75 to 300 to 300 f4, all of that, right? Um, Possum might be a possum. Yeah, I got some of those freaking things out here, but it's I don't know. It's a four-legged animal because it's got this gallop sound to it, right? It's galloping. If it only had two legs though, it'd be a person, right? But it's got kind of a gallop to it, but it's got some heft. Ugh. But all right, everyone. I guess I'll call it if there's no other questions. Never work with children or wildlife. Okay. But definitely check out my Instagram, my Twitter. I'm not Twitter. I'm not on Twitter. Or I don't use it. I have an account, but I don't use it. But Instagram and Flickr. Flickr is better if you want to pixel peep the images, because I post the largest one I can on there. They're all processed though, and I make a note in the notes, edit in Lightroom and Topaz. Uh, but you have to process your raw images, otherwise you're not going to get the best out of them. They're going to just look average, right? Processing really brings a lot of pop to the images. Um, so that's that, and I really appreciate everyone coming in today. I had a great time as always. Hopefully, I was able to convey some information that you found useful, and I'll probably be back on Thursday. We'll have to see. I should be working on my taxes instead of streaming. I still got some issues, but anyhow, you guys have a great rest of your weekend. It was good seeing everyone again, and I'll be back as soon as I can.